Welcome to the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit, a gathering of the most powerful minds in technology, media, and entertainment. And this is Bloomberg West. Coming up, technology firms scrambling after a European court overturns a crucial data collection agreement. Plus, one day after being named Twitter's permanent CEO, Jack Dorsey rolls out an important new product in a bid to attract more mainstream users. And we sit down with some of the biggest innovators in technology, including Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes, Y Combinator Sam Altman, Slack co-founder Stuart Butterfield, and a celebrity surprise joins us. That's right, Jared Leto photobombed our live shot. First, Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit in the heart of San Francisco. This is where the titans of technology, business, and media come together for conversations about innovations and shaping the future. One of those innovators is a startup called Theranos. It's upended healthcare with a cheaper, faster, and less painful alternative to traditional blood tests, and it's now worth $10 billion, making its founder and CEO, Elizabeth Holmes, the world's youngest female billionaire, as it happens. Elizabeth Holmes joining me now here on the set, along with our new head of global tech coverage, Brad Stone. And Elizabeth, I'm so excited that you're here because I've been watching your company rise and come out of stealth mode. And this is something that you founded when you were 19 years old. You dropped out of college to do it. So I would just love to hear from you. Lay out your vision for us and where you want to take this company.
Well, first, it's wonderful to be here. I think this is such a wonderful program. Our company is about realizing a world in which early detection and prevention become a reality. And we want to take this company to a place in which, because of our work, person by person, everyone has the right to get access to their own health information and to be able to do so at incredibly low cost and in a wonderful way. And that means changing the way we think lab testing is done today.
Now, one of the most innovative things about your technology is you can take a finger prick of blood and run dozens of tests on a teeny tiny little sample. Save money, save time, save pain. Just how much are you saving of those three things?
Well, we started with money, and we've taken now over about 200 of our tests available for less than $10, less than 300 tests are less than $15, and that means a cholesterol test is $2.99, where it could cost hundreds in other locations. And that means people, even if they have insurance, who have really high deductibles, can afford it. And in the same way, we've done the same thing with blood, really reducing the amount of blood that's taken, whether it's a finger stick or just a tiny amount of blood from the arm.
Elizabeth, I've read a lot about Theranos, but here in California, and actually in a lot of states around the country, I haven't encountered Theranos tests. So what are the hurdles to getting into more states? Are they regulatory, or are they basically just partnerships with companies like Walgreens?
We have a wonderful partnership with Walgreens that we've built, which is a national partnership.
But it's still limited to a number of...
And all we're doing now is in Arizona, exactly. We've got a couple locations in California, and we just started in Pennsylvania. But for us, it's really about making sure we build a solid foundation. There's so many technology companies who have grown too fast, and in this space, you can't afford to grow too fast because the stakes are too high. So we think about it person by person, site by site, city by city, building out a framework, and then building on it as we can ensure the integrity of the service.
So what states are next after Arizona and Pennsylvania?
Arizona, Pennsylvania, California.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Arizona, because you backed a bill that changed a lot of things, basically giving us as consumers the power to order our own blood tests without the need for a doctor. Are we going to see you trying to spearhead those kinds of legal issues in other states? Where else are we going to see this next?
Absolutely. Yeah, I had the privilege of being able to help draft it, and it's something I believe in so strongly because I know what it means to not be able to get access to this information in time. And so we believe that this is something that should be a right for every person, and it's something that we're working to do state by state everywhere we go.
If you do get FDA approval for these diagnostic devices, what do you think the impact will be on the rest of the market and the traditional companies like Quest and LabCorp?
Well, we were fortunate to get our first FDA clearance and then the associated CLIA waiver to use our systems outside our lab this summer. And it's been really interesting to see the response from the lab industry, because they have so aggressively seeded false information about us into the press, into journalists, into physicians in the market that we're in. And we've worked really hard to keep our head down, because I've always believed that person by person we serve, the integrity of what we do will speak by itself.
But if you have to look at that part of the industry, I mean, how seriously does it disrupt their business model?
Right, and how much could it help your business and hurt theirs if they don't have this FDA approval?
Well, it's a very interesting question on the FDA approval. I think FDA approval needs to be the standard for all lab tests, and right now it's not. That is a very controversial position to take, and that's probably part of why we're seeing this kind of reaction. But I can't speak for them. What I can tell you is that we're trying to solve a different problem, which is the problem of every person being able to engage with their own health information. And so we're building our business in a different way.
Do you think it helps you sell more tests if you have those approvals?
I think it helps us change the market. I think it helps us redefine in healthcare what it means for an individual to be able to be engaged in their own testing. And I think that'll change everything in healthcare, because the minute you allow the consumer to play a role, you create a market, which just doesn't exist right now in healthcare, and that's the beginning of seeding innovation.
You've raised more than $400 million. Of course, Theranos has valued at over $10 billion. For the capital story, what's next for you guys? Is it an IPO?
Well, we like being private, so you'll see us private. But we're in an incredibly fortunate position in which we've been able to continue to build the business from operations, and we're going to stay focused on that.
And you have this fantastic board with Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, so if you have to negotiate a treaty with Russia, you are in great shape.
We're covered.
But in terms of business strategy, Sam Nunn, where are they adding value?
Yeah, well, it's just been an incredible group of people at a strategic level. We use our board for strategy, and this company is about changing the healthcare system, and there's a lot of strategy that goes into that, and so it's been wonderful to have them be part of it. We've also had the privilege of being able to have people like Riley Bechtel, who's just built a phenomenal company in Bechtel and a multi-generational company, and Dick Kovacevic and others who really understand what it means to lead a great business.
One last question. You're trying to reform Medicare and Medicaid. What do those programs look like 50 years from now?
I think an incredible win for all of us would be to showcase that technology can be applied toward making a difference there, and that the application of technology means that savings can be realized without having to cut programs or raise taxes. And what that means is 10, 20 years from now, companies being able to come in, as we're doing, we're the first company to bill Medicare and Medicaid at less than they're willing to pay, and federal and state programs beginning to realize savings just through the market working. And that's one of the amazing things about this country, is that we have such phenomenal creativity and innovation that can be applied towards solving policy issues.
Elizabeth Holmes, founder and CEO of Theranos, it's great to finally have you here on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be watching.
Thank you.
All right. Well, meanwhile, thousands of American companies, including some of the biggest names in technology, have a major problem on their hands. The European Union's top court overturned an agreement today that let American companies handle the data of millions of European consumers. Under the so-called Safe Harbor Agreement, American firms were allowed to transfer personal data of European citizens back to the United States. The ruling now raises serious questions about whether companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google can operate in Europe without breaking the law. Coming up from the Vanity Fair Summit, we've got another influential guest. Eventbrite co-founder Julia Hartz will be with us. Is this unicorn going public anytime soon? Isn't wasting any time trying to grow the company's user base. Just a day after being named the permanent chief, Dorsey rolled out a crucial new feature called Moments. It's a newswire function designed to appeal to people who aren't hardcore users by organizing top tweets around news events like the Super Bowl or the Oscars. This is what we had been calling Project Lightning. Now, earlier today, we sat down with Benchmark Capital partner Bill Gurley and asked him about Twitter's prospects with Dorsey at the helm of both Twitter and Square.
For me, it's a platform that has more potential than almost any large company that I know that's out there. I mean, I, in my mind, can imagine scenarios where the stock's 4-8 times higher than it is today. That's a lot harder to say about other companies that are more matured into their model. Still a lot of work.
Wow.
Still a lot of work to go make that happen. But the most important people in the world, in almost every sector, covet and curate their Twitter handle, and if that's a lot of potential energy if you can harness it.
An optimistic view there. And on that same note, Y Combinator president Sam Altman told us that perhaps Jack Dorsey doesn't have a hard job at all. Take a listen.
In some sense, he has an easy job, right? He has one of the great assets of the web that has been beaten down and sort of mismanaged as badly as possible. So if Jack is able to fix a lot of these basic things, which with sort of the founder moral authority you have to be able to do, these things are never easy in business, but he has a nice tailwind.
And we are back now at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit in San Francisco. Still with me, our new head of global tech coverage, Brad Stone. And joining me now, Julia Hartz, co-founder and president of Eventbrite. Julia, great to have you back on the show. Always wonderful to talk to you. And you guys recently made an appearance in Fortune magazine as one of the top places to work. And you trumpeted some of your diversity numbers. And I want you to share those with us because I think they're really important because you've worked really hard to diversify your own organization.
Thank you. We were so excited to be included in this national ranking of best places to work for women. So we ranked number 50 in our first year on the list, and it was truly a dream come true for me. Included in that were our gender stats, which are well above the average. We've known this for a while, so across the board, overall 50-50, almost exactly. Technical 25%, still working on that, and also executives 40%. So it was exciting to see a nod to that because it has been a big part of our culture for now almost 10 years.
It's interesting. Chamath Palihapitiya of the Social Capital Partnership just came out with a new list today called the Future List, ranking venture capital firms by gender, age, and their own level of diversity. And it was pretty dismal. I mean, we already know that the numbers aren't great in venture capital when it comes to women. But, what's your reaction to something like this?
You walk down the halls of a venture capital firm or any traditional financial institution, you'll notice something. They have a lot of work to do to get to where companies like Eventbrite are today. I think that it's actually not about the VC firms, though. It's about the number of women founders and the number of women leaders. Role models, that's the most potent form of changing gender equality. When I look at Elizabeth Holmes or Melody Hobson.
Exactly, by the way, you're the second female founder on our show today. So
you guys are doing pretty well. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard to be a working mother. It's hard to be a founder. You put those two together, you have a hard proposition. But the more and more that I see these types of women role models around me, the more I feel empowered. So I operate on 3 principles. Make sure we have great role models at Eventbrite. Make sure that as a company, we're building the infrastructure to really support working parents overall. And then 3, be honest with ourselves when we have an area that we need to work on.
So let's talk about Eventbrite. $200 billion in global ticket sales. Talk about the momentum and why it keeps building.
Well, what we've tapped on now for, again, almost 9 years is this wide gap between the big incumbent ticketing providers and the do-it-yourself methods of email, spreadsheet, guest lists, and that gap was very large. We're a multi-category ticketing platform, and there's a real use for that in the world. We have tens of millions of active consumers who are actually coming back to Eventbrite to find great live experiences, and I think what we've keyed in on is that humans like to connect. It's why they come to events like this summit. We need that connection. And so that's our vision, is to bring the world together through ticketing. And it turns out it's a great business as well.
Is Eventbrite a unicorn? Do you embrace that designation?
Well, I guess there was a definition put upon us, right? I feel like we're pretty magical. But, for us, it's about, can we fulfill our promise to our investors and to ourselves that we can drive real value through this notion of bringing the world together?
If the fundraising climate shifts tomorrow, are you guys okay? What do you do to adapt?
We are. Probably the proudest I've been of the company has been in the last 9 months. So before it was a sexy topic, we were going after efficiency because we could see the writing on the wall. This isn't my co-founder and our CEO's first rodeo, so we knew that we needed to make ourselves foolproof if we want to stay independent. So I'm really happy to say we're doing okay, and we're on that path to independence.
So, you and I have been talking about this for years now. You've said Eventbrite will go public. You will be a public company. One of the things Bill Gurley of Benchmark said on stage today is companies should operate as if they are going public someday. This idea that you never have to go public is unhealthy. So, what's your response to that, and what are your plans now?
Well, speaking of health, I think it's really important to build a healthy organization. And I do agree with Bill Gurley that we should be operating as if we want to go public tomorrow. We don't want to go public tomorrow, but we actually are getting ourselves ready to be a sustainable, independent company with optionality. That works in both the private markets and the public markets. And the idea is that you can't rely on capital markets for your growth. You have to start to self-fund your own growth. And that's really what we're keying in on. That is, again, very unsexy in the Valley to talk about right now, but efficiency is something that is number one if you're going to stay independent.
Right.
And I think that's just a totally different ballgame.
It's not about being sexy, it's about building a great business.
That's right.
Julia Hartz, co-founder and president of Eventbrite, always great to have you with us. Thanks so much for stopping by. Now, speaking of unicorns, we also caught up with Slack CEO and Flickr co-founder Stuart Butterfield earlier today. Slack is one of Silicon Valley's hottest startups trying to revolutionize enterprise messaging. The company has doubled its valuation over the past year to $2.8 billion. Listen to what Butterfield says about why we're not in a bubble.
There will be a correction at some point. We've had a great, like a 7-year run on the public markets. Valuations have been going up very quickly on the private side. Is it going to pop and there's nothing behind it, or will we see an adjustment? And I think you could, even having the prizes of some of these companies, are still going to be very strong valuations and represent a lot of growth. Would that have been the bubble popping? I mean, that's I think the argument that I have. There's something behind this.
And as we wrapped up the conversation, Brad and I had a very surprise guest.
A new way of interacting socially, so it's going to take a long time to figure it out.
All right, Stuart Butterfield.
I just want to say hi.
Oh my goodness!
Most interesting.
It's Jared Leto, everybody.
This is the smartest guy.
Not quite as joking here, but
thank you, Jared.
in San Francisco. Good to see you.
Why are you here?
This is like a whole new photo bomb right here.
What are you investing in right now, Jared?
Well, my best investment, I kid you not, is in Slack. I'm a very proud investor and a very proud user of the product. My email list has shrunken by 70%. He has made my company more efficient,
Jared,
and he's made me happier.
Is that the Joker hair, or is that the
Right.
variation?
Are you kidding me? This is pink.
Is this
Joker
Batman?
is
That's
green,
true.
my friend.
Is this Batman?
I gotta leave.
Thank you.
I'm still giddy. That Jared Leto crashed our party.
was a nice
That was
surprise.
pretty awesome. And Bradley Cooper's here too, so it's been a pretty good day. Okay, we'll be right back with more from the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit coming up. Welcome back to Bloomberg West. We are live at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit here in San Francisco, a who's who of Silicon Valley. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is at the top of the list this year on the cover of the magazine. Joining us now, Vanity Fair contributor Max Chafkin. You wrote the cover story on Mark Zuckerberg. Brad
And a recent cover story on Travis Kalanick. You're like the Uber,
Right.
you're the unicorn of journalists.
You've basically been killing us and beating us all, really.
Well, thank you.
But let's start with the summit and how you compiled this list and the speaker list today, because I mean it's a killer list. These are people that are really tough to get.
I mean, basically we start back in February, March, just brainstorming. We call every smart person we know and say who has the most influence, and we're thinking about sort of business influence and also cultural influence, and we just sort of start winnowing down, and then there's the secret sauce that goes into the final ranking.
The dartboard.
Yeah, exactly, the dartboard. And there you have it. And we were, fortunate enough to get a lot of these people to show up and do live conversations.
Now, I really thought your piece on Mark Zuckerberg and Oculus was incredible because it had so much detail that even we didn't know. Talk to me about writing that piece and meeting Mark and hearing his vision for virtual reality, which nobody else has seen.
It's so interesting. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but it gives you a sense of how expansive Mark's vision for Facebook is. Because you look at WhatsApp or Instagram, those are acquisitions that sort of fit in to a vision of Facebook that's very narrow. And then you look at something like virtual reality, and it isn't an obvious fit, but he's sort of transitioned to this mode where he's thinking way, way ahead. And then you have a $2 billion acquisition for a virtual reality
That was way, way pre-product.
Are you a believer, and how do you think we're going to be using virtual reality when we're old?
I think the jury's kind of out. I think that in the next few years, you're going to start seeing them on airplanes for sure. I think gamers in their homes, you're going to start seeing it. I think maybe 20 years from now, some business meetings, things like that. I don't think we're going to plug in to the Matrix-like thing anytime soon. Although there are people at the Facebook campus who are thinking along those lines, at least.
What do you think the highlights have been so far today and into tomorrow?
So for me, watching Lena Dunham and Kevin Systrom of Instagram sort of talk about both the platform and how it's changing the culture was fascinating. I think Lena maybe made a little news when she dissed Twitter.
She did.
Which she has done over and over,
Yeah.
but yes.
She said recently she was going to stop using Twitter, but then she still uses it.
I thought
Via a surrogate. She said she emails to someone who tweets on her behalf.
I thought watching the bubble panel was very interesting. I mean, it was kind of gloomy. I actually hadn't quite appreciated just how many. It seemed like a lot of people were feeling dark, and that was sort of new to me.
Why do you think people are so consumed by this question of whether we're in a bubble? I mean, there are cyclical upturns and downturns like clockwork. It's inevitable.
It's interesting because normally the sign of a bubble is no one's talking about the bubble. So maybe there's some kind of counterintuitive thing where we could decide that party on. Based on this.
By the way, your boss, Graydon Carter, actually came on earlier and said, absolutely, we are in a bubble. So he called it.
Yes, well.
Uber, your Fast Company headline was something along the lines of why we all love Uber. Are you sure? Are you so sure that's true? Is it time for them to make their victory lap right now?
I think that that Uber is a really, really useful service, and that there's been so much negative press, but when you just take a few steps back and look how amazing the company's growth has been and how life-changing it has been, it's just remarkable. There aren't too many companies like it. I mean, I think it's on the level of Facebook in terms of
Max
growth.
Chafkin of Vanity Fair, thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us. We'll be back here all day tomorrow.